Marshall, Will, and Holly on a routine expedition met the greatest earthquake ever known.
So, YouTube, we are joined by a man who truly doesn't need an introduction, but I am privileged to give him one anyway. Actor, producer, writer, a.k.a. Will Marshall on Land of the Lost, Mr. Wesley Eure. Thank you for joining us, Wesley.
Thanks, guys. I saw your podcast the other day about Land of the Lost.
Oh, did
You were nasty and mean.
They were all against me, and it was mainly about the and this is one of the questions I wanted to ask you too to get started. It was mainly about the remake. What did you think about the remake? So that's one of my first questions for you, Wesley. Before we get started, Wesley, I have to throw a big shout out to you from a big huge fan of mine, my son, Light. He loves Dragon Tales.
Oh, nice. Yay.
When I told him I was talking to you, he was shocked. I was like, I'm talking to one of the creators of Dragon Tales. He was like,
Dragon Tales, it's almost time for Dragon Tales. Come along, take my hand, let's all go to Dragon Land.
That is incredible.
Oh, that was great. Thank you for that.
Cool. Thank you, Weslly. So, So one of my first questions for you, Wesley, is have you seen any of the remakes or new interpretations of Land of the Lost?
Yeah, I was at the premiere for Land of the Lost, the movie with Will Ferrell and those guys.
What was quite about it?
Well, I mean, imagine it's Grauman's Chinese. It's every fantasy you ever wanted for a movie premiere. With the camera, the paparazzi, Sid Marty Krofft, celebrities up the wazoo, and everything. So I'm sitting in the theater, and it's quiet, and we're watching the movie, and I'm kind of in shock. I mean, it's not quite what I expected it to be, and as you guys mentioned in your podcast, that in the original series, Marshall, the dad, it's a dad and daughter. And
right.
In Will Ferrell, it is an archaeologist, and it is his assistant, right, Anna Friel. Mm-hmm. And so there's a scene where it's all quiet, and Will Ferrell reaches in and he kisses Anna Friel, and it's quiet, and I go, ah! I didn't mean to do it. I wasn't trying to be a jerk, but I looked around. I felt like, oh my god! It just took me by surprise. So
that's
so
awesome.
That was Wow. And Phil Paley, who played Schockenheimer at the party afterwards. It was this big party. I mean, ice sculptures and caterers and celebrities and props and sets. And Phil and I sat in the corner, and I looked at Phil and I said, Phil, you realize that this entire party cost more than all 3 seasons of Land of the Lost.
Wow.
Oh,
is it true they only have 3 sleeve stack suits? Is that true?
That's it. Yeah, Mike Westmore created them from Star Trek. He was the Star Trek guy. He did all the Star Trek, the original, and a lot of he has that show Face Off now.
Uh-huh.
But he did all those sleeve stack, and there were only 3. They were all wetsuits, and they were UCLA basketball players. And
wow.
Bill Eure, the Detroit Pistons. If you guys are basketball fans,
yeah.
So Bill was a sleeve stack, and Kathy, who played Holly, and I surprised him last year or 2 years ago now because of the pandemic.
No way.
We surprised him. He's coaching the Aces in Las Vegas, and we showed up, with news cameras, and the head of the organization knew we were coming. They set it up, and all the ladies on the team had a 8x10 of a sleeve stack. He didn't know we were coming, and they suddenly held it up in front of their faces, so they looked like sleeve stack. And we walked in with models of sleeve stack, and he was terrific. And if you know anything about Bill and Beer, and he's really gruff, like
yeah.
And the owner, after we finished all of this, and Bill left, the owner of the league came up to me and said, I've never seen him smile that much in all the years I've known him. So,
wow, that's awesome. One question I have for you is, did you actually get to try on the sleeve stack costume when you guys were performing?
They were, first of all, those guys, I'm short. Those guys, they were like Bill and Bear, 7 feet tall in his bare feet. and they had stilts on and then pointed heads. They were almost 10 feet tall in real life.
Wow.
Right.
And you know,
I believe it.
and also there were wetsuits. I mean, they were real wetsuits. So to get it's like putting a wetsuit on. It's like it's a girdle. And those guys, it was so hot. Those guys could only stay in it maybe 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. I mean, literally, they'd rip the heads off of these guys, and they'd be like pouring sweat. And it was a miserable costume.
So when it comes, so did they consult you on the remake of Land of the Lost?
No, and I met with the director, and they promised, Kathy and I a bit, and they promised Bill Paley to play Chuck a bit, and they didn't live their promise until almost the end. We got a call and said, "Hey, listen, we want you in the movie now." And I go, "Okay, what do you want us to play?" They go, "Oh, you're man and wife." Call it Kathy and I, and they didn't write anything special for the movie. It was a scene that was written for the movie, had nothing to do with us. So it wasn't like a tongue-in-cheek, a nod to the old series. It wasn't anything. It was Kathy and I were a couple picking up our valet parking. In the original movie, Will Ferrell was a valet parker at the Page Museum. That was all cut. So we were going to say, "Hey, we need our parking ticket validated." Will goes, "I don't need any validation. I found Land of the Lost." And that scene got cut. So they changed that ending. They added Matt Lauer at the end. So
Wow, that's quite a shame.
it sucked. I got to tell you.
Yeah.
And Will Ferrell could not have been nicer, though. I'm telling you, he loved the show. He was a great fan. He played a character once called Marshall, Will, and Ollie in another movie. Which is Marshall, Will, and Ollie. Right?
Yeah.
So, and I went to see him film, and he was terrific. He had just sang the theme song the day before, and I sang the theme song in the original series and the closing theme song. And he came, "Oh, Wesley, I just sang the theme song," and and Danny McBride came over, and I pretended I lit a torch and I passed the torch to him. I mean, it could not have been nicer. Anna Friel was just fabulous. But at Comic-Con a few years after the show, I was the surprise guest for Sid and Marty Krofft, and Marty goes, "All right, we blew it. We apologize."
Yeah, I remember they had to apologize for the movie. They actually literally apologized for how bad it was.
Well, you guys said, I mean, it lost $100 million in production, $100 million in advertising.
Yeah.
So, and the head of Universal, I think he got fired over it.
Yeah. But here's one of my biggest questions I wanted to ask you. What the movie did do that the show, just didn't get a chance to do. Was there an ending? An idea for an ending? Was what they put in the movie kind of where the ending was, or was that completely out of left field, or was it just kind of like a week by week kind of thing when you guys were writing the show?
Well, the end of the first season, it was written by the Star Trek writers. David Gerald was our head writer. He wrote Trouble with Tribbles. If you guys are Trekkies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Walter Koenig, who played Chekhov in the original Star Trek, created Enoch, the talking Sleestak.
Yeah.
DC Fontana, Larry Niven, all these people had written the Star Trek episodes. Then, of course, Star Trek was off the air in 3 years, and David brought them on to write. But the end of the first year, because nobody knew if it was going to be a second year or not, because the Crofts traditionally only had one season in their shows. And it's my favorite episode. It's called The Circle, and in that episode, the time doorway is going crazy. The Land of the Lost there's a loop, and it's Kathy and Phil and I, the Marshall family, going over the waterfall over and over again. And Enoch says, there's the time doorway. You said you must leave. I go, "What do you mean, Enoch? Mean we can leave the Land of the Lost?" He says, "No, you have to leave. You have to. 3 must leave, so 3 may enter." And so finally, at the end of the episode, my dad and Holly and I, we walk through the mist doorway. We go back to Earth, and our doppelgangers come back and begin all over looking around. There's dinosaurs, an empty cave, and it's all over again. So there was a parallel loop. Parallel.
Wow.
That's kind of crazy.
That is really crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Land of the Lost never spoke down to. I mean, it was people antecedents and time doorways and it was very heady for the time. Remember, it was a same show. We did 2 episodes a week. Their budget was nothing, and but the writers, the sci-fi writers, I mean, like David, they really up the game on this.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, so and you don't mind answering, when Spencer Milligan left, and I feel like they really leaned on you, especially in those last couple seasons of Land of the Lost, was there ever a feeling of like, oh, this is it, the show's done, or did you guys like, oh, we'll just carry on with Ron Harper? I mean, not, he played, no offense to him, he was awesome too.
Right.
I was just kind of curious, like, was there ever an idea of maybe, you could take over that lead kind of role more and continue the show on?
We were sad. I mean, I was angry at Spencer for leaving. I mean, we're all very good friends. I just called Spencer for Father's Day, so we're all very close. Even Kathy and I talk at least once a week. But there was an anger because we had a hit series and one of the lead actors leaves. It's kind of the jumping the shark moment.
Yeah.
Like, and Ron was terrific. I was actually doing Days of Our Lives at the same time, and his wife was on it. So it was like I go to Days of Our Lives in the morning. There'd be his wife, and then it'd be with Ron in the afternoon. And they didn't have the sci-fi writers that they had. They became a guest star thing, and I started singing, and I had like a 4-string banjo guitar kind of thing that sounded like a full orchestra.
I thought it was great though. I mean, I actually added that into our that episode that you've seen.
Nice.
When
But to your point, I got to say, thank you guys for saying there's some nice things about the movie, because I agree with you. There were some really good points, and I agreed with your point that had it come out now, because when Land of the Lost came out, the movie that was in competition was Hangover, which became
the number for my mom.
It was, but I agree that it would have more of a quirky. I think it might have gotten an audience better. I mean, there were problems, and the Crofts admitted it. It became, Abbott and Costello. I talked to Marty recently. We did a show together in Hollywood, and we filmed something. And I'm doing a show with Sid this weekend. And he again said, we blew it. We just blew it. He said, I gave up control of the show for the first time. I've never given up control of a show before. And I gave up control, and it became the Will Ferrell, movie. So.
Well, let me just say, as the only one among the rest of them here, I seen the point of the movie. I seen the representation of it, of what it was trying to get at. Like, there was there was those slight nods to like the bridge, the two dinosaurs fighting. There was a lot of different things they did add that I just think it got past a lot of people. And yeah, one of the biggest things, like Squid was saying, the whole changing the characters, how it wasn't a brother and sister dynamic no more. It was just individuals, which in a way, that did throw it off in a huge way. That's my opinion, but I saw what they were trying to go for. So I understand that it was like a financial failure, but I saw the homage they were trying to do to it in my way. I did personally.
Marty will be very happy.
On too. Did you ever have anything to do with the Nickelodeon one?
I never heard of it. Came on the air. I heard, they're doing a new Land of the Lost, and that's when I heard about it. And then it came on. I watched, I think, one episode, and it just was like, again, with the Jeep and a sexy girl and that kind of stuff. And I mean, it was what it was. And of course, it didn't last. It lasted one season, and then it was over with. Land of the Lost for the Cross was their longest running show, their most successful show. And of course, I was a huge fan with Sigmund the Sea Monster, Lidsville, and all those things. And by the way, Sid did at Comic-Con. Sid said, "All right," because remember, Lidsville, Puffin stuff, Land of the Lost. He goes, "Yes, I did inhale." So.
Wow.
That's great.
I know you talked about like one of your favorite episodes that you did. Were there any other episodes that you truly loved doing? Like ones that still stick with you today?
Well, Kathy's favorite episode, Kathy Coleman played Holly, is Elsewin, written by D.C. Fontana, which if you're a sci-fi person, you will know this name. She's one of the most famous sci-fi writers. And she was one of the only women's sci-fi writers. In fact, she had to use D.C. It was Dorothy. She had to use D.C. so people would hire her because they thought she was a guy. But Elsewin is when Holly meets herself in the future. and it was at the end. There's a scar that the older Holly has, and Holly goes, "Where'd you get that?" She goes, "You will know soon." And then she disappears, and Holly cuts herself.
Wow.
Okay.
It's kind of crazy.
The sci-fi. I mean, listen, I know it looks hokey now, and in the '70s it was state of the art. I mean, it was the
Right.
it was high tech.
Right.
First time they had melded, the dinosaurs were in film and we were in videotape, and they were able to put those together simultaneously. It didn't work the first day, and some of the most famous engineers in Hollywood came together and created that technology. And of course, now it's just CGI. You type in the computer, you can create the dinosaurs and
I
stuff.
was just gonna ask you, how did that work? Did you have to stand behind that bush and were they like, Wesley, it's a Strugomimus, it's a Strugomimus, it's eating. Like, how did you have to do that? Like, were they like directing you like it's a T-Rex, you gotta run?
It was really cool. We had two sound stages. It was huge. We had more celebrities come to visit our set, from Elton John to Cher to Stallone. Everybody wanted to come see Land of the Lost set. But one of the sound stages, half of it was, instead of it was chroma key back then, not green screen. It was a blue color, and they had the whole wall of a sound stage painted. The floor, everything was all blue, chroma key blue, and we would stand on it and they would shrink us down on the camera to the size they wanted us, and on the screen you could actually see it. They had the film footage of the dinosaurs, doing whatever they're going to do. So they said, "Look at that light up there. That's going to be Grumpy's head. Run this way," And they were able to actually put it together immediately, so we could see the playback and see how much it worked. And they go, "Oh no, you've got a shadow here. It's not working. Let's relight it," and that kind of stuff. And when Kathy, there's one scene in the opening where Kathy's riding Dopey, her pet dinosaur.
I remember Dopey.
Dopey.
Yeah.
They had a barrel on wheels. The barrel was all blue. The wheels, everything was blue. The rope that pulled it was all blue. Kathy straddled it. They shrunk her down, and they pulled her by looking at the monitor. So the animation is Dopey's walking like this, and they pull it so it matches her walking.
That's really cool.
So yeah, it's I know it's hokey and stuff like that, but there's something kind of fun about that. When I did Dragon Tales for PBS, what we discovered, and the research showed us, that that the more one-dimensional animation is, the more powerful it is emotionally. Like Disney, and you see those wonderful, incredible 3D animations suddenly looking humanoid. It doesn't have like The Simpsons is a 1 degree, the Family Guy is kind of a one-dimensional, and there is more of a connection, some odd connection, and maybe that'll change in the future. But at the moment, with our civilization, people, what they're used to, is there is an emotional connection. So something with Land of the Lost, the technology, I know, hokey, great back then, hokey now. But there's something endearing about it, I think. And when I see the old shows and stuff like that, I Time Machine and things like that, the old dinosaurs, whatever. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm old, but
I think practical effects go a long way.
Yeah.
I think they're better in a lot of ways.
I think they're more endearing practical effects because of the Land of the Lost coming out in the heart of the 70s, and then you had the Planet of the Apes also coming out in like 1974. I think they were exploring in TV show and films more of the let's take a different approach on pseudo worlds, like where there is a Land of the Lost and dinosaurs, and there is a planet where there are apes, and there was a lot of practical effects, like you and Rob said, that really are obviously lost art now, where there's a bunch of, if Land of the Lost came out now, it would just be a CGI show that would probably just fall to the wayside. But there is a lot of endearing facts. It's sort of like a precursor to the Lost in Space. When I was a kid, I used watch that show first, and then I would tail it with Land of the Lost with my dad, and I always watched those two back to back. And the Land of the Lost, it was definitely more quirky, but it was more endearing, probably because it had dinosaurs. But there was just something about that show that, for its time, it just seemed like it was way ahead of its time, that it wouldn't get really the notoriety that it should have gotten like for dinosaur films in the 90s with Jurassic Park and the show dinosaurs and stuff around that nature.
I absolutely agree because what's interesting about especially the remake is what I was trying to point out too in the episode was how much lore there is in the show nowadays. Like people don't really discuss like think of Land of the Lost, you think lore, but there is a lot. There was quite a bit of stuff that's like how it's a mix of time and space together, or everything's mashed up. I mean, there was quite a bit to it. I mean, it's very detailed for a kid show, I would say. Many people just think of it as dinosaurs and you guys just running away from them, but it was a lot more to that. There was a story there too that was really interesting and really ahead of its time, I feel, especially for the sci-fi genre. And I think a lot of people are trying to still capture that now, that whole kind of wholesome of we're lost, we got to stick together, teamwork, find our way out of here now. I think Land of the Lost really, really started that whole kind of trend.
David Gerald was the head writer, and thank God he was the head writer because the sci-fi. But it was a story about a family surviving. That's the base of the show. And without mother was dead, and there was a bond. And we have people because we do autograph shows around the country and stuff. Kathy and Phil and people will come in tears to our table and share stories of them with kid. There was one guy. It says he was crying, this guy, and he said, "Listen, I know it's going to sound, but my mom and dad were getting a divorce, and I couldn't handle it. I was devastated." He said, "I know what to do." It was going into the third season, and he said, "But when I saw that you lost your dad, and your uncle came in, and you were able to survive," he said, "I realized I could survive this," and he said it changed my life, and I just want to thank you guys. I mean, he was really. We have situations like this happen all the time. Because remember, you're the most vulnerable time of our lives. We're little kids sitting with their bowl of cereal in front of a TV. It's our time. It's the only time we get for TV back in those days. And parents slept in, and we got we got the TV until 11 o'clock, and it changed a lot of kids. We had two guys that came up to us from. One guy says, "I thought you guys spoke Farsi." I go, "What?" He said, "Yeah, I used to watch Rock, back in the days, and you were dubbed into Farsi." And my brother and I, he said, "Well, we became scientists, and they were two of the heads of JPL, Jet Propulsion Lab." He became a scientist because of Land. And
I was going to ask you that. How many paleontologists are like, "I love you so much"?
A lot.
Right.
But we had scientists and archaeologists, and all the sciences. They invited us at JPL. Kathy and I, we did a private tour. And actually got to go to this one room that you have to have the highest clearance. Most people can never get in there. And it was this big room. Imagine this room with a bunch of computers and one person in there, just sitting there. It was the guy that's driving the rover on Mars. And he's driven every he had a driver's license, said a Mars driver's license. And he let us play with the joysticks to drive the rover. Mars.
That's awesome.
Now, it did move the rover because what it's done with the computer. They move it. It's all done. A computer program. They watch it. They make sure it's what they want for the next day. And once they're satisfied, they send it to Mars. And it takes 8 hours to get there. And then the rover, it reacts to it. But we got to play with it. And we told people at JPL, "Oh yeah, we were just in with." I forgot his name. I always remember his name. He goes, "What? You got in there?" Because it's so secure. But he was a huge fan of Land of the Lost.
That is incredible. So, Wesley, what does Land of the Lost mean to you? Like nowadays, it's been so long, of course. It has a cult following now. What does it mean to you personally now, especially with all the fans you have out there?
It's amazing that it's really built up in popularity. The cult status. There's more lexicon that people talk about Sleestak and Pakuni and Chaka, and it's still you hear it in movies and the news reports and stuff like that. He reminds me of an old Sleestak and stuff like that. It's an honor. Who knew we were doing this show. I was doing a soap opera. Then I did that for almost a decade and Days of Our Lives and moved on to hosting game shows and things like that. But it's been an honor. Sid Croft called me 2 nights ago, he asked me to do his podcast this weekend on Instagram, and that's Sid Croft calling me. I mean, as a kid, that's Sid Marty Croft, and he's talking. He calls, and I listen. I don't talk to him. I listen for an hour, like stories and stories and stories and stories. But it's an honor. I mean, it's a real honor, and we've met the most amazing people. And Kathy and Phil and I are really like brothers and sisters. And I've always said that the Cross didn't just cast my TV family; they cast my real life family, and we feel like that. And so it has permeated my life, especially doing the autograph shows and things like that, which we do. And it has opened many doors for me to get to meet the stars that I love from all the shows. I get to, at these conventions, I get to sit behind the table and there's the Brady Bunch, and there's, Little House on the Prairie, and there's, and we're all having breakfast together. And I'm going, I'm from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. My family wasn't in show business. I was a kid from Mississippi, and I look around and go, how the hell did I get here? I mean, we said, Lou Ferrigno was sitting next to us for 5 days at a show. And I'm going,
Oh.
Right. Yeah. Very cool.
I find that to be like really amazing to have that kind of like to be a part of a show for as long as you guys were, to be able to create like a family out of that. I find that to be really amazing. My last question is, when I was reading up on you, I saw how you talked about Days of Your Lives. Now, did you love doing Land of the Lost more, or doing Days of Our Lives?
Well, they were 2 different experiences, but I got Days of Our Lives first, and then I got Land of the Lost, and they were both NBC shows, so NBC let me do them. So they allowed me to film all scenes on Days of Our Lives in the morning. So I would go in and record, so the cast, for 3 years, the cast hated me of Days of Our Lives, because I got and then so in the morning then I would go to Goldwyn Studios and film Land of the Lost in the afternoon. So in the morning, I'm crying that my girlfriend's leaving me, and I'm having sexual problems. The mafia is after me. And in the afternoon, I'm going, run, Holly, run! There's a dinosaur. It was a bit schizophrenic, but it was I felt like the luckiest guy ever. I mean, I had 2 series. It was like, well, really? When I got the shows, I didn't have a car. I didn't have any money. I was like, wow, where did this all happen?
That's incredible. And, I just
Yeah.
want to thank you again so much for coming on with us, Wesley. We appreciate it so, so much. This is a childhood dream come true for me to speak with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I must listen. I loved watching your podcast. I really did. I howled, and I threw things at the screen, and you owe me a new computer. But but I mean, I love the energy you guys have. I mean, I know. Listen, I've rambled on like a banshee here, like.
No.
We love it.
Man.
We honestly love it.
But you guys are amazing together. You have such chemistry, and for a show, that is the magic.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
We appreciate it.
And again, we're so honored to have you on, Wesley. I appreciate you answering me. And again, like I said, childhood dream come true so much today. I appreciate you coming on.
So cool.
Thanks, guys.
You're an honorary real shark forever.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You-
If you ever come out to the Comic-Con that we have in Phoenix, we would love to do like a photo op with you.
Oh, I'd love.
Yeah.
Listen, you have any
Stop
people
by.
in Phoenix? Get them to bring us out. We've never been to Phoenix to do a show.
Absolutely. Okay.
Oh,
We'll
of
definitely try.
course.
Yeah.
So again,
Thank
thank you
you
so
guys
much.
so
Wesley.
much.
Yep. You have a great day, Wesley.
All right, take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
When I look all around, I can't believe the things I found. Now I need to find my way. I'm lost, find me.